Welcome to the Tony Frida Show. Tony Frida here, and this is another edition of Thought Crime Thursday. If it's Thursday, it's Thought Crimes. And we have a special treat today, a bona fide thought criminal, Debbie Lerman, who wrote this book, The Deep State Goes Viral. I did the cover, and beautiful cover, by the way.
Yeah, best cover. I can't tell you how many compliments I've had on the cover.
Well, looking at it, I should have made this a little bigger, but anyway. Debbie Lerman is a writer and researcher who publishes her work on Substack. You got to follow Debbie Lerman's Substack. She was a Brownstone Institute Fellow from 2022 to 2024 and published her first book, The Deep State Goes Viral, Pandemic Planning and the COVID Coup, in 2025. She has a degree in English from Harvard, so she's really smart. And before 2020, worked as a medical writer and visual artist. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have an expert on a deep state because I've been thinking about the damn deep state for 20 years. I wish I didn't, but they're thinking about me, so I better think about them, right?
Yeah, I also often wish I didn't have to think about them.
I know, but it's like that saying, like, you might not care about politics, but politics cares about you. Mm-hmm. So you might want to be informed what the hell these people who run the world are planning to do with your future. It might be important. So I was going to start with a little rant about, since I've been thinking about deep state for 20 years, like, I could be wrong. You know, there's different interpretations of what it is. You know, the mainstream says it's all a conspiracy theory, but I think we have a lot of evidence to prove that it is real. But what is it? What is the deep state, right? There's like we know we have like 13 intelligence agencies in the United States, have the NSA, and we also have DARPA, Defense Advanced Army Research Project. So it's this combination of scientific think tanks, surveillance systems, spying systems, intelligence operations. And every country has them, right? I mean, Russia has the FSB, England has MI5, MI6. China has such a secretive version of their spy organization. It doesn't even have a name. So it's super secret. And our mainstream media denied that there even was an NSA for many years. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. When it first came out, for the first like 5 or 10 years, they just said it's a conspiracy theory. So they try to hide, but we're onto them. And we're writing books about them. So this is my take. I wrote it down because I want to be precise here. What I believe the deep state is. And then I'll ask the expert if I'm right. I think deep state is an entrenched, unelected consortium of intelligence agencies, military, bureaucracies, multinational corporations, scientists, central bankers, think tanks, like the Club of Rome is one, and media, mainstream media, and also now influencers. Don't trust these guys because most of them are working for the deep state too. They've been either compromised or bought off or Epstein Island stuff, you know. Edward Bernays, in his book that he wrote 100 years ago, called this the invisible government. So you think about it as an invisible, unelected government, or you can call it deep state. Whatever you want to call them doesn't really matter because they have enormous power. They create policy. They manufacture consent through their minions in the media. Operation Mockingbird, the Frank Church hearings proved this in the 70s, that there is an unholy union between the mainstream media and the intelligence apparatus. So he had the receipts. This is not a theory, okay? They work in tandem to convince you of stuff that may or may not be in your best interest, and usually isn't. So where did it all start? I was reading Harlot's Ghost by Norman Mailer, and in it he refers to CIA. He says stands for Catholics in Action. And he doesn't really explain what he meant by that. So I started thinking about it. Like, you know, what is the genesis of this global intelligence apparatus that has its tentacles into every aspect of society and culture and government? right? They carry out assassinations, they rig elections, they foment color revolutions, do a lot of fun stuff like that. And they also manage plagues or pandemics, as I like to call them. Um, you don't want to go with pandemic on the title. I like that better, but so this is my theory, and because I studied a lot about the Renaissance and what was happening during the Counter Reformation, um, and I think the genesis of the intelligence apparatus that we see today really started around the 1550s during the Counter Reformation in Rome, in the Vatican. Right, they signed the Council of Trent, um, which was a Counter Reformation referendum, right? And there was the Inquisition, right? We're going to go after these people who were trying to subvert the church and expose our crimes. So they codified it into this Council of Trent. And for the first time, confession became this thing that we think of it today, right? You go in the confession booth, it's a private interaction between you and your confessor, the priest. That's not how it always was. Before the 1550s, it was either a public thing, it was more, it wasn't this mandatory thing where you had to receive or confess before you could receive Holy Communion, right? So they changed the sacrament and the rules of it. So confession went from this informal periodic ritual to a private mandated sacrament. And really, at the heart of it, it was an intelligence gathering operation for the Inquisition, right? The priests would get this, the Jesuits would get this information, and they became very adept at eliciting confessions, getting names, getting information about what people were up to, because some of the people who were confessing to them were soldiers and military and nobles and the gentry. So it was quite a good place for them to gather data information to launch their Inquisition. So it shifted from the social and religious reconciliation program to a moral and political surveillance tool. And I think from there, they built this apparatus. They learned like how we can get information and collate it and process it and use it for our own purposes. And like I said, the Jesuits were experts at getting the right answers from the right people. So we fast forward to 500 years later or more, and what do we have now? We have this thing that's metastasized into this global panopticon, this monster that surveils with AI help now every single thought we have, our hopes, our dreams, our fears. And what is the greatest tool of the deep state? In my estimation, it's Google, that was founded by DARPA about 30 years ago. Now, Google is not there. It's not your little friend that's there to answer your questions for free, okay? Google is everything you put into Google, you're feeding your own obsolescence, the machinery of your obsolescence. Google is collating trillions of data points every day from billions of people. That's why they keep building these giant AI centers, data centers, because they have so much information now that they're gleaning from every aspect in every corner of the world, that they need these giant places to house this data. It's one of the reasons that they're using it. But what they want to do is, through gathering all this information, is understand us better than we understand ourselves. And we're predictable animals, right? So now when they have, in the aggregate, the way humans are going to react to any given situation, any given stimuli, they're able to predict the future, right? When you can predict the future, that gives you power. Obviously, you can make investments based on that. You can make political maneuverings, but it goes beyond that now. Now they're not just using it to predict the future. They're using it to implant stimuli to, because they know what we're going to do, manufacture a situation and manufacture our consent to a situation, knowing what our reaction is going to be, problem, reaction, solution. So they're not only predicting the future, they're creating the future, because we're like livestock to them that just needs to be managed. And where it's all going, this dovetails with the transhumanists' agenda, which is to take all of this data, all of this knowledge, all of this magical wisdom, which they believe will give them this omniscience, this omnipotent power to control humanity. And they will become a breakaway species that transcends humanity. It's about transcendence. And because they will have, through quantum computing, eventually in the very near future, and when they reach the singularity, which we're supposedly right on the precipice of, they will have the power to control us in every aspect of our lives and steer the future beyond the threshold of our perception with manipulation, with propaganda, and with other nefarious means, high-tech technology. It's called brain waves, and your brain doesn't have a firewall. So once they're able to access that with those electrical signals with quantum computing, all bets are off. So literally, they want to destroy free will and be able to predict everything we're going to do and then manage us as if we're livestock. Those are the ones that they don't cull through either plagues or through soft kill weapons, like these wonderful vaccines that make us infertile and stupid and scared. And they're doing a great job, by the way. I got to give them credit. So that's kind of the big picture where they think they're going to transcend humanity and become merge with machines, merge with technology, where they won't have to Google something. It'll be in their brain. They'll have the power of AI literally in their brain. They'll become a superior species. It's like every dystopian sci-fi novel. There's two classes of species. There's elites, and then there's us, the non-essential, right? They didn't call us non-essential for a reason. That's how they think of us. We are non-essential to them. They look at it like, oh, we let you live, because we're such nice guys. So I think that's the overarching reason why it is a deep state. If you look at the really big picture, right? The view from outer space looking down at Earth. And it manifests itself from the trivial things in our lives to the biggest geopolitical things that are happening. And the biggest one, obviously, in my lifetime, the most earth-shattering has been the one that Debbie wrote about in this wonderful book. And why don't you tell me if am I onto something with what the deep state is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, you said a lot. So yeah. I think, I think that what you said at the beginning, that it is a giant octopus that is composed of the intelligence agencies and military and giant corporations and nonprofits, academic institutions, think tanks, all those things, and the media. And I would add Silicon Valley billionaires, all of them, including Elon Musk. Probably number one or number two is Elon Musk in that pyramid. So it is a psyop to think that he is anything but one of the technocratic, globalist wannabe controllers. That's just a little aside, because I always, I'm surprised that people think that some of them are better than others, or some of them actually do have our best interest in mind, which, as you said, the deep state, what really characterizes it is that it is a group of organizations and people who do not have our best interests in mind. In fact, who are working to accrue as much power and resources as they can. So I would say their goal is to get control, like you said, of as much of the world's resources as they can. In order to do that, they also want to maintain their power and their position, so they need to control the population. A few things that I wanted to say about your excellent overview. One is, I think it's really interesting to think about the Catholic Church and the Inquisition and the Confession. That's something that I hadn't connected to it. I think there's a lot of interesting places in history that we can look for the origins of the deep state, and that sounds like a really interesting one. because the confession really is a really great place to get a lot of information. Like
Yeah, they figured that out.
I think for me, the most important historical vein to mine in this sense is the one that deals with corporations, because I think what is actually controlling, or what is the most important aspect of the deep state, is not the intelligence agencies. That is somewhat of a pop culture kind of misdirection, in the sense that, like, oh, the deep state is the intelligence agencies. Actually, the intelligence agencies are acting on behalf of the global corporations, Silicon Valley,
Yeah,
uh,
well
and
put.
and the wealthiest individuals and organizations. So the intelligence and organizations and military, they by themselves don't have any resources or power. They have to get it from governments and private entities. And now that the private entities control all the governments in the world, pretty much, they also control the militaries and the intelligence agencies. And it is not a United States thing, it's a global thing. So, for instance, one of the crazy things about COVID that I discovered, that's mentioned a little bit in the book, but that I continued to research after the book was published, is that it was NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That is the military alliance of the West that was in charge of COVID. It wasn't just, and of course, with the cooperation of the militaries and intelligence agencies of all the participating countries. So it's really important to think about it on a global scale, and not think that, now the United States, now that we have a certain administration, we're much better on free speech, and we're going to undermine or dismantle the deep state because that's what Trump says, and he's against the deep state. But in Europe, they're really bad. In Europe, it's terrible, and we have to fight Europe, or we have to fight Russia or something. It's absolutely not the case that we are better than Europe or any other Western country. We are all working together. The deep state is working in all of these places at the
Yeah,
same time, simultaneously. But they want us to think that, just like they want us to think that Republicans are better than Democrats, or Democrats, every 4 years they want us to think something about Democrats or Republicans, so that we don't look at them.
yeah,
Right? So the main goal of the deep state in terms of propaganda is to make sure that we're not looking at them. We're not looking at global corporations, global military alliances, global spy agencies and stuff like that. That we're looking at Trump or Biden or the Democrats or the liberals or the woke people or the anti-immigrant people or any of that. All of that is a psyop. It's all a psyop. And so it's really, if you want to keep if you want to really look at the deep state, if we want to keep our gaze focused on the deep state, then we need to always be evaluating whether the information we're getting is trying to manipulate us to feel negative emotions towards our fellow citizens. So if we're getting information that is making us feel animosity towards a particular group of our fellow citizens, a racial group, a national group, a religious group, that is always propaganda.
yeah,
And it is always intended to take our gaze away from the deep state, which is a universal, nonpartisan entity, and to distract us by saying, oh, it's the immigrants, oh, it's the left-wing extremist tranny sharpshooters, or it's, the anti-immigrant alt-right, so there's labels on both sides that can rile people up a lot and make people think that they need to vote for somebody who's going to change that. But all the elected officials, every single one of them, is bought and owned by the deep state. So there's nothing that we can do in terms of voting that will
yeah.
change that. So that's another really important thing to understand. It's not that Trump is against the deep state. Trump, at one point in his career, was getting in the way of some things that the deep state wanted, or he was leading a so-called populist movement that the deep state wasn't happy with. And so they did things to try to stop that. But now he is absolutely a part of the deep state. Everything
Yeah.
that he's doing is furthering the goals of the deep state. And
Yes.
then,
So I mean, look at Epstein Island. You want to see who some of the deep state guys are.
Mhm.
They're all over there. I mean, including the royal family, and you just made me realize something that you're right about. Is these rich oligarchs who are really the military and industrial intelligence operations are working for. But that goes back to the Renaissance too, because the Jesuits were working for the Pope, who was the richest, most powerful guy in the world. They were working for the Orsini family, and they were working for the de Medicis. So they were like the Elon Musks of their day. So it does dovetail with that historically. But in this book, you make the case that the response, the global, orchestrated, perfectly synchronized, totally planned. That's why I like the word pandemic, because I'm sure you know about Event 201. Johns Hopkins ran a drill like a month before they unleashed this thing, and they war gamed it out perfectly. And the other hallmark of a psyop is that you're not allowed to question it. And man, I never saw anything you weren't allowed to question like this thing. I mean, anybody who questioned it was immediately censored and shamed and fired and tackled and arrested. I was one of those people. I wasn't arrested, but I had everything else done to me because I questioned it. I kind of reverse engineered it by March of 2020, and I can prove it because the Anti-Defamation League defamed me, saying that I'm a criminal for questioning anything. So.
Wow, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, they put me on a list. They got me banned from every platform. But yeah, they said I was insane because in March 2020, I said, you watch, they're going to have a vaccine, and they're going to say if you don't take the vaccine, that you lose your job. And they mocked me in this interview for saying such a crazy thing. And by the way, I was right about everything. So, and so are you in your book. But your book makes it, just to really boil it down, your book makes the case that this was not a traditional response to a medical health crisis or epidemic as ever before seen in history. This was more like the response you'd see to a bioterrorism event or a some sort of international strategic threat, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, again, I think my research and thinking have even evolved beyond that, because when I was writing the original articles that are in the book, I was writing for Brownstone Institute. And at first, when I started researching and I discovered that this was actually a biowarfare exercise and it was not a pandemic. It wasn't an outbreak of a naturally occurring disease. I was thinking along the lines of lab leak, of engineered viruses and stuff like that. My thinking has evolved beyond that now. And I think that in line with the deep states, the way the propaganda works is that they'll present a mainstream narrative and a counter narrative. And both of those narratives are not the truth, because they want people, who read the New York Times like I used to do, and listen to NPR like I used to do. They want them to believe that it was naturally occurring, that there's many more pandemics coming, that they have to be afraid. On the other side, they want people to think that they can engineer viruses and that there's going to be many lab leaks, not leaks, or if it's not a leak, it's intentionally released. And that there's all these really scary viruses that, again, you have to be afraid. And they're going to be able to use that fear on either side to do what they want when they decide that that's going to happen again. Now, I don't actually think that they're going to use pandemics again necessarily, because I think too many of us are not going to comply. Yeah. I hope too many of us are not going to comply. Well, I really hope so. After all the work that you and I and all of us have done.
I know, but if you talk to these people, they're still in denial. And I mean, they're still the majority, or they're embarrassed to talk about it. So we don't really know how they truly feel, because now when they're presented with this evidence, it's like that idea Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool somebody than convince them they've been fooled. So there's still complete radio silence in the mainstream media about the adverse events, about the truth of it, any of it. And there's no accountability. Who's being held accountable? They threw one scapegoat, to the wolves. Fauci's still running free. The man should be, he should be up on charges of crimes against humanity. And he's just running free with the millions and millions of dollars that he got from the government. So I don't know. I don't have as much faith in humanity as you do, but I think we're still a tiny minority. I mean, we're trying to get the word out there.
Let's put it this way. I I don't know if I have more or less faith in humanity than you do. I hope I have faith that, so I probably have less faith than you, because I actually think that the people who became aware during COVID of things that you for many years before that, like I think you were aware of them since 9/11,
Yeah.
or right. I wasn't. I wasn't at all. And a lot of people I know who woke up during COVID didn't know about the deep state, or didn't care, or didn't look into it before COVID. But I think that most of the people who became aware of the deep state during COVID have been propagandized again, and they've been sucked back into the propaganda machine, and they
Yeah.
no longer understand, even though they said during COVID that they understood that it's not partisan, it's not about Democrats and Republicans. We can't look to politics to save us. We have to get out of this. We have to expose the system so that we can figure out an alternative. They said all those things, but now they don't say those things anymore. Now they say, yay, yay, RFK, yay, yay. You know, Trump is gonna save us. Trump is against the deep state. RFK is gonna, I don't know, do something. Maha is a health freedom movement. You know, so I actually have much less faith now in humanity than I did during COVID, because during COVID, I lost faith in everything that I used to believe in. You know, my left wing, idealistic, democratic stuff, liberal stuff. I lost faith in that, in all the institutions, in the New York Times and NPR, and in the universities and the medical system, all of that stuff. And then I thought, okay, but I have a new community of people who are medical freedom people. They are aware, they understand. And then 2024 came along, and they just all went the same way as my previous COVID cult. So now, instead of, there's the COVID cult and there's the Maha cult, and there's very few of us who are not in either one of those cults.
Yeah.
And so that's so I actually had a huge breakdown in 2024, because
Well, it's brutal. I mean, that dark night of the soul, when you realize like everything you built your whole ideological framework and structure on is made out of straw. Like, I mean, I've gone through several of those, and it's just it's a moral crisis. It's because it's everything you believe, and it takes a lot to like admit that. That's why I think so many people don't do it, because it's so devastating to do it on a personal level. And then, I mean, you're also losing friends and family, and everybody hates you. It's like, and we like to be liked, you know, as humans. And when everybody says, you know, you're crazy or worse, you're killing people, like it's extreme. Or you're losing your job. I mean, people can lose their whole career over this stuff. So it's like, it takes a very strong, brave person, which you are, to go through this and to confront the fact that everything you've been taught is a lie, and to admit that I was conned. I fell for it. It's a hard thing to do. But, listen, you brought up RFK, so I just want to say one thing. I worked for RFK's campaign for a year when he was running for president, not HHS secretary under Trump. And I have a soft spot for Bobby, because it's all about deep state. He knows and has admitted openly that the deep state murdered his father and his uncle, okay, and in public. You know, his father when he was 14 years old. So he knows what they're capable of, right? And I'm working on the campaign, and then the one thing I thought was very suspicious was him hiring his daughter-in-law, Amaryllis, who's a CIA officer, to run his campaign, and she was a spook. And you know, there's no such thing as ex-CIA. Once you're CIA, you're CIA. It's like the mafia. Like, you're not getting out. So you're connected to the deep state, literally. And that I always thought was a little suspicious and didn't sit well with me. But you know, I was working on the campaign. There's people like David Talbot, who wrote the Devil's Chessboard. I mean, serious people, and people who knew Bobby personally, and people who knew his father were on this thing. You know, I'd be in a Zoom meeting with these people who knew Bobby Kennedy. You know, so it was pretty cool, and they're really smart people, and they believed in him. And then we're at this meeting where I'm in a meeting, and we get the announcement that he's going to quit the campaign and work for Trump. And it was just like, what? I mean, nobody saw it coming. These are like the high level people. They had no idea. And it just, everybody was just crestfallen. It was just like dead silence in the Zoom meeting. Like, wow, what the hell just happened? So I don't know. I mean, you know, play devil's advocate. Do you think that, is it just that HS secretary doesn't have a lot of power because obviously drug companies and deep state have way more power than he does? Uh, or do you think that he was compromised before he even ran for president?
I think it's interesting the word compromised, because I think people want to think that Bobby is a good guy.
Yeah.
And there might be a part of him that wants to be a good guy. But you have to judge him by his actions.
Yeah.
If he were truly a good guy, I believe, if he were somebody who was honestly and earnestly fighting the deep state, not just saying the CIA killed my dad, that is not fighting the deep state at all. That's just saying the CIA killed my dad. It's not saying who was in cahoots with the CIA. It's not saying what the plan was. It's not saying the bigger picture of the deep state that you and I were discussing, and why the global corporations and the richest people in the world and the military alliances and the Jeffrey Epstein type networks, that existed at that time, were all wanted to assassinate him. He's not talking about any of that. So that's one thing. But more importantly, if he were an honest and earnest person who was really trying to undermine the deep state, at least when it comes to COVID, because the reason that he was catapulted into this national political position is because there was a populist movement. It was a nonpartisan movement that developed during COVID of people like me from the left and people like a lot of my friends who I met, who are no longer my friends, but who were my friends from the right, who all saw what was happening and realized that we needed to work together against the pharmaceutical companies, the military industrial complex, and all the politicians who were bought by and who were owned by this giant global conglomerate. Or a lot of people think about it in national terms. So I'm just not even, sometimes it's hard for people to wrap their minds around the global scope of it, but it doesn't matter. We all knew it. So in order to do that, and we all knew that what was killing and injuring literally thousands and thousands of people, I'm not going to say millions, although I do believe that worldwide it is millions, but definitively for sure, at that moment that Bobby started running for president in 2023, right? Or 2024, 2023, there were thousands of people who were being killed and injured every day by mRNA products that were totally unregulated, and they were military countermeasures. They were not pharmaceutical products. Bobby did not say or do anything to stop that, not when he was running, and particularly not when he got into office. And I always give this example. If Bobby were earnestly and honestly trying to fight for what the medical freedom movement wanted him to fight for, not chronic disease in the United States, not the situation with obesity and diabetes that's been going on for 50 years. That's not what we were talking about at the time. We were talking about a much more urgent, a much more serious and acute problem that we wanted to address, which was the deep state either trying or managing to kill and injure lots of people, right? If he were earnestly and honestly trying to fight against that, instead of going with Trump, he would have said something like, and this is just one thing that he could have done. There are millions of things that he could have done, but here's what I would have done if I were in his place. I would have said, okay, I'm not going to be running for president for whatever reason he decided not to run. I think it was actually planned for him to get all of Maha on board and then throw them behind. I think the whole thing was planned. But let's say it wasn't. Let's say he was running. He really wanted to be president. He decided not to run. He would say, okay, listen, I have to suspend my campaign, but I have all these followers and I have all this media attention globally. I've never had this much attention on the issues that I care about. The issues that I care about are right now, I care about COVID and mRNA products. And in general, what I really care about are vaccines that are killing and harming millions of kids every day around the world. Those are the things that I care about. I am suspending my campaign. And on such and such a date, I am going to declare or organize organize with my contacts in many different countries that I have. I'm going to organize a day of protest against COVID mandates and in general, and in particular mRNA vaccines. and I'm going to organize that in X number of cities, in X number of countries. And whoever feels or knows that they were injured, or that they know somebody who was injured or killed by mRNA products, or even just vaccines in general, come out and protest. Now, of course, that would end his political career and whatever. If he did that one thing, just that one thing, millions of people would have come out onto the streets, and there would have been a real populist show of power and support for the things that we were fighting for. Instead, by going with Trump, he completely suppressed, diverted, and dissolved the populist rage that would have been in those demonstrations, or in one of many other things that he could have done. Dissolved it, destroyed it, by putting people into this MAHA thing. Now, the MAHA is a corporation slash political movement. So it's a public-private partnership between people who want to make lots of money off of the fake health stuff that they're doing, and people who want to support certain political agendas, all of which are basically in favor of the deep state agenda. That's what MAHA is. And so all the people who are earnestly and honestly fighting the good fight against COVID mandates, COVID vaccines, and vaccines in general, were all co-opted into this public-private, corporate political entity. And we were told, not we, because I was never part of it, but they were told that they couldn't speak out. We all had to be united. Whenever anybody tells you that you can't speak out against something that you believe is bad, because we have to be united and we have to support Bobby and we have to support our people in power, something is wrong, because that's censorship.
Yeah.
And that's what we were fighting against. We were fighting against censorship. Now, when I started writing articles, which in my very naive, again, I was naive before COVID. I thought that I had learned, but then I became naive again, because I thought, well, I'm just going to continue to expose the same power structures that I exposed in my COVID investigations. Now I see the same power structures. I see the same trends happening with MAHA and with Bobby and with that and with Trump. I'm just going to continue doing what I do, which is show that these are not what you think they are. So in COVID, we had Deborah Birx telling us this is a public health emergency, but she came right from USAID, which is a CIA cutout. So she was telling us it was a public health emergency, but she was from the deep state. Same here. We had people like Callie and Casey Means and lots of other people in MAHA telling us this is, we're going to be fighting against the chronic health epidemic. They wouldn't talk about COVID or mRNA or any of that. So that was already a huge red flag, right? We're going to talk about food dyes and glyphosates, and we're going to research every cause of autism known to man, right? Even though we all know that it's vaccines.
We all know.
Right? But we're not going to say that. We're going to research every other thing, Tylenol, things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so when I tried to say that, which I thought was just a continuation of what I had been saying about COVID, I got completely censored and excommunicated. So censorship was rampant. And on X, X, which is the fake free speech platform or whatever, censorship is absolutely rampant. And you can't say anything against Elon Musk, and Elon Musk loves mRNA, and so does Trump. And so again, it's a continuum, but people don't see the continuum because they've been propagandized to think that, somebody else is in charge. So now it's a golden age, and now we're going to have Bobby and we're going to have Trump and everything's going to be great.
Listen, I mean, you're probably right about Bobby, but I still have a soft spot for him, because I know, studying deep state for 20 years, that he might have had a plan to do what you said. And because I think he does know the truth about, he wrote a book about Fauci. He knows about these vaccines. And they might have come to him and said, hey, remember what we did to your father and your uncle? Like, you like your kids? We don't know. They killed millions of people with the vaccine, so they have no problem killing his family. I'm just saying, we don't really know in his heart of hearts what was going on.
But then why would he have agreed? So if he knows the deep state that well, why did he agree to get entangled with them in that way? It doesn't make any sense. If he knows that he can kill himself and his family, then he should stay away. He should have stayed at CHD and done whatever he does at CHD. Nobody was threatening him. Nobody was trying to kill his kids. He knows, he knew. I mean, given the narrative that you're telling, I don't necessarily agree with that narrative, but let's say he honestly thought that, he was going to go into politics and the deep state was going to have no power over him.
Yeah, I mean, no, you make a good point. I don't know. This is another one of my heroes going down in flames. I want a hero. I have so few left. I mean, I lost all my old heroes, but I made new heroes like you and CJ.
You're my hero, Anthony. I mean, so that's the thing, is like, we are each other's heroes, because we don't need political heroes. Are never going to be, never going to represent us. Never. I mean, if I think about RFK, and I don't know him personally, I know a lot of people like you who know him and think he's great. And I have seen him behave in a way and talk in a way that makes him sound extremely compassionate and extremely humane. But you have to think about his life and what it means to grow up as a Kennedy. It doesn't matter if you're the black sheep Kennedy, or the Kennedy who is allowed to say things that the other Kennedys won't say. In fact, if you're that Kennedy, you're probably part of the game, because they need that. They need a Kennedy who can say things about the CIA killing his father and his uncle and stuff like that, so that it doesn't seem like it's just this monolithic deep state family, which they are.
Yeah.
All the powerful families are, just like you said, if you're in the mafia and the CIA, but by the way, which in Whitney Webb's books, One Nation Under Blackmail, is revealed to be more or less the same. It's interchangeable. The mafia and the intelligence agencies work very closely together.
The Kennedys were all mobbed up, but no. So the reason I got attracted to Bobby was I judge a man or woman by their enemies, and there was 100 hit pieces a day in the mainstream press that he's going to kill you all. He doesn't believe in vaccines. I had my own mother like screaming at me saying, how could you work for him? He's going to kill everybody, because she heard it on The View and places like that, nonstop anti-Bobby propaganda. So when I see that, I figure like he must be onto something, because they hate him and they want to destroy him, and they're writing hundreds of articles. In the campaign, I saw all these dirty tricks they did to try to delegitimize his campaign and to try to get it thrown off the New York ballot. So like I said,
that's a really interesting point, because I think it's a mistake to judge a person by their enemies. You have to judge them by their actions.
Yeah.
Because I can have enemies that are the same enemies that Donald Trump has, let's say, or that Anthony Fauci has. I mean, maybe he and I are both in some kind of religious group, and that religious group is being persecuted by the mainstream media. What if both of us were Mormons, and Fauci and I were Mormons, and the mainstream media was doing a whole anti-Mormon campaign against Fauci? Then I'd be like, oh, wow, I'm also Mormon, so he must be a good guy, right? It's really, that is propaganda. And it's really interesting that you brought that up, because the way propaganda works is much more insidious and clever than we think. It's not just people telling you lies. Most of the time, it's people telling you something that's true, but in a context or in a way or with additional information that makes you believe something that's false, or that makes you want to do something that is not in your best interest. And the way the media works now is that the so-called alternative media is almost all infiltrated.
Yeah.
So there's no more, and I don't know if there ever was, but it's much, much clearer now that the mainstream and the so-called alternative media are using the same propaganda, but directed at two different sides. So when an article is published in the New York Times saying Bobby is trying to kill us with his anti-vax attitudes, it is at least 50% likely, and probably more. And in fact, there was a recent Reuters article that people are talking about where they trash Bobby, and they say that Bobby was trying to do all kinds of great things with the vaccine schedule, and that he's so anti-vax, and everybody's like, see, that means that he actually didn't betray us. It means that he actually is trying to do good things.
Yeah, I see.
I am almost sure, and I don't have proof of this, this is conjecture, but from my research on propaganda and how propaganda works, I'm almost certain that that particular article in Reuters was planted by the pro Bobby propaganda machine. And I know that sounds weird and counterintuitive,
No,
but
this is
right now, everybody in our camp or on the medical freedom side is mad at Bobby because he hasn't done anything, and he's proven to be exactly what some of us thought that he was going to be, which is totally ineffectual because you can't go into the system and beat the system. But so people are getting disillusioned, right? And so at this low moment when people are very, very disillusioned with him, all of a sudden, an article appears in Reuters that says that Bobby is actually doing things in the HHS that are, for us, amazing. For the mainstream media, it's fodder to say, oh, he's anti-vax, he's trying to kill children, he's going to cause, measles explode, whatever it is that they're saying about him, right? It gives them that opportunity, but more importantly, it does exactly what you said, which is, it shows us that they're against him, and therefore, if the mainstream is against him, then he must be on our side, and that is a lie.
This is why I love you, Debbie. This is why I love you, because I'm looking at it at a deeper level thanks to your insights. And you're right. I mean, and I admit when I get played, and like I said, I had a soft spot for the guy, and I think I got played, but I know people smarter than me who got played too with this one, and they're still getting played. So I love trying to really get to the. I mean, you got to think like a demon, like to figure these guys out, because they're really good chess players, and they're thinking the long game, and they understand human psychology, and they don't care who they hurt in the process. They're very Machiavellian, but yeah, this is the only way to reverse engineer it is think like, if I was like a demon and I wanted to kill everybody, what would I do? Like,
yeah,
and
it's
have
for
the power of the media and the military and intelligence agencies and huge corporations, like, and you start to figure out ways you would do it, and then you look around and you're like, oh, that's everything starts to make sense.
And whenever you see something, whenever you see someone or something that seems to be acting, they're just stupid, or it doesn't seem right. Usually, it's actually a much, much more clever play than what it appears. So, and in the book, in my book, I did a lot of research on the propaganda. In fact, I love it. It's so great. I can't even tell you. I tell a lot of people, even if you don't want to read my book, you should buy it for the cover and just put it up as
Just
a
tell
work.
Prince. So Prince, I can make a print of.
Just
this needs to be bigger. See, this is the Emerald City made of vaccines. I don't know if you can see it, but
it's so good. It's so good. And so what I did, most of my research was about the propaganda, because what scares me the most is how vulnerable people are to propaganda.
oh my God.
And so I became an expert at looking at a narrative and understanding, or trying to figure out what that narrative is doing, because all narratives in the mainstream and almost all in the so-called alternative are all propaganda. And whether people know it or not, a lot of people are just repeating what they hear, and they don't necessarily know what role they're playing in the propaganda game. But there is just so, it's just so
it's insidious. I think the whole COVID psyop was the biggest propaganda juggernaut in history.
Yeah.
They got 7 billion people to take these things that are going to destroy them, but it shows, like, I mean, the level of fear-based mind control with it. People, when you're in a state of fear, you're more easily manageable. You're looking for the savior. Oh, enter Fauci and Gates. They're like the fatherly figure that's going to save you and has the answers. And they really played on this fear and fear of death and fear of illness. And you're going to kill somebody. Somebody's going to kill you. And it put us all against each other, atomized us. And we covered our faces, and we've lost our identity. And we became part of the mass mind, part of the herd. And there were very few of us who could see it. I mean, it was like the Emperor's New Clothes. It was just like, obviously none of this is rational, because when you're afraid, the rational part of your brain is shut off.
Mm-hmm.
So they did this just concerted, relentless fear campaign, and man, it worked. And man, did we fail that test, because I think that was a beta test. There was something much bigger that they had planned, and from in their little hideouts somewhere, they're saying, man, they'll fall for anything. So They were arresting guys like for running, jogging on a beach in the middle of nowhere. And, you know, they had horses come run up and tackle the guy and throw him on the ground. Like, if they could arrest you for that, the most benign thing there possibly is running on the beach by yourself. Like, they were setting the precedent, and nobody complained about it. They were setting a precedent. We can arrest you for anything as long as we say there's an emergency. There's nothing. We could arrest you for standing and, oh, you're breathing, you know, and just tackle you and throw you in prison. So they set this precedent that they own us and we are slaves, period. And anything we say, as long as it's in the context of an emergency authorization, we're going to inject you whatever we want. We're going to take away your job. We're going to take away your money. We're going to freeze your bank account. We're going to shut you down. You can't talk on the internet. There's nothing we can't do to hurt you if you don't go along with the program. And most people did.
And I'll
And it
tell
was
you
a dark
what,
day for humanity.
I think it's really important what you said, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's when we're in a state of emergency. So I forgot to mention, and this is probably the most important thing about the deep state, is that this whole conglomerate of corporations and military intelligence and media in Silicon Valley, what they need and what they want is to operate outside of the legal system. And the only way to operate outside of the legal system is to be in a state of emergency, or the easiest way to do that. You have to be in a war or in a state of emergency. And so anytime anyone declares a state of emergency, that is the biggest red flag that there is a deep state operation happening, because it means that they can do whatever they want. There's no legal review. There's no legal oversight or regulatory oversight. Now, President Trump has declared more states of emergency than any other president. And he declared them and two of the big ones he declared the day after he came into office. Now, did anybody on the freedom side notice or mention or care? I didn't see that they did. Only the very conspiratorial ones that I follow. We're talking about it. So he declared a state of emergency for energy. And the reason he declared it is so that the AI, the people who are building the AI infrastructure, could do whatever they want with no legal or judicial oversight in terms of energy.
Yeah, well, that's why they had to demonize ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine immediately and say it's horse dewormer, because you can't get emergency use authorization for a vaccine if there's any prior known treatment for it. So they had to demonize that and say there is no prior treatment, so they can get emergency use authorization, make billions of vaccines, and have no liability because they're protected. So
now the AI companies have no liability, and they also have they don't have to go through any regulatory hurdles or legal hurdles. The states don't have any rights, just like they didn't have during COVID, to challenge it. They can build their AI shit anywhere, and they can take as much energy and water as they want. So that's what happens when there's a state of emergency, and that's what the deep state needs. The deep state needs a state of emergency so that nobody can challenge them. But on the positive side and on the anti-fear side, I would say all those things about the singularity and quantum computing and all of that is all fantasy.
Yeah.
That is all fantasy. And it might also be intentional fear porn, because they can't do any of that. Some of them might believe that they can. I mean, I think they really want to upload their brains to compute.
Yeah, that was my question. Do they believe it? Because they seem to, they're investing trillions of dollars in it. And
yeah.
They seem to believe it, like the transhumanists, it's like a cult or a religion where they believe they become immortal and omniscient. But
but a little bit I sense, because of the way that they act in the media and the way that they pretend to be these crazy people, jumping all around, like Alex Karp from Palantir, and those, they act a little bit, it's a little bit almost over the top. It's a little bit like too much over the top craziness, where
he's like a DMT leprechaun jumping around or something.
Yeah, right. And so it makes me think that some of the stuff that they're saying, even though they want it and they want to believe it, they know that it's not happening, but they want us to believe it. So if you and I believe that they can implant chips in our brains and that they can control our thoughts through some brainwave thing, or that they have Google in their brain, none of that is true, and none of that will ever happen, ever.
And we'll see.
But if you believe that, then you attribute a lot more power to them,
Yeah.
right? And it makes people a little bit less, or a lot less, I don't know, willing to resist when you think that they have that much power. So I personally think, in my understanding of technology and science, that those things are total, complete fantasies. They will never, ever, ever happen.
Okay.
And we should be happy about that.
I'm happy. Believe me, I'm not totally sold, but I had another guest on, VN Alexander, who's kind of an expert.
Yes, VN Alexander, excellent.
Yeah, she's of your way of thinking, and
Yeah, we agree
I don't
on
know.
that.
We'll see, because she says that they can't do it. They will never do anything nefarious. But ChatGPT already convinced a kid to kill himself, so that's already robots killing people. But back to your
Oh,
book. So this makes the case that this was not a any sort of rational or historically, relevant uh, response to a public health crisis. This was like a military operation. So if you could just do like, really brief synopsis of why that is.
okay.
You got to read the book, but I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but just like, because that's really important.
Yes. And I guess I'll just tie it into what we've been talking about. The reason that it's important to understand that about COVID is because COVID is the poster child, like you said, like it's the first time, it's the biggest propaganda operation probably in history. And it's the poster child for how the deep state works, because they expose themselves probably a little bit too much. I don't know if they expected to be as exposed as they became, that more of us saw what they were doing. So in terms of COVID, in terms of who controlled it and the military control of COVID, what my research and other people's research has uncovered is that it was not Fauci. It was not Fauci who was in charge of COVID. Now, of course, he's part of the deep state. I mean, he's definitely knows what the agenda is, and he's working for the agenda, but he didn't plan it.
No.
At all. Not at all. The whole thing about blaming Fauci is another propaganda distraction, believe it or not. And so Fauci was just one of many, 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 many participants in the PSYOP. But the PSYOP itself, as I had mentioned before, was not run by the public health agencies. So what I discovered and what I wrote about in the book is that even though everybody was told that the CDC and the NIH and HHS, they were doing COVID and they were doing bad things, and you'll hear a lot of people, even on the health freedom side, many people will still talk about how we have to reform public health. We have to get rid of the CDC. We have to have Jay Bhattacharya at the NIH. I love Jay Bhattacharya personally, but I have the same feeling about him now that I do about Bobby, because he's in there and he's participating in the system. And so they do things like, let's fire 100,000 people from the CDC or whatever. That is has zero impact, less than zero impact on the deep state, because that is just the bureaucracy. And when people often mistake the permanent bureaucracy, which is the administrative state. It's just the people who administer the government, with the deep state. They do it all the time. They say Trump is against the deep state because he fired all those people at the CDC and he got rid of USAID. Now, USAID is a CIA cutout. So yeah, that touches on the deep state, but it doesn't affect it in any way, in the sense that it doesn't affect how it operates. It doesn't affect what its plans are or its ability to carry out its plans. Firing 100,000 people from the CDC is not only not effective, it is also a distraction, because it makes people think that the deep state and the administrative state are the same thing, and that if we fight the bureaucracy and the unelected officials, that's what people are really into. Like, the unelected officials are running everything. We need to have elected officials. Our elected officials are all bought and sold.
Yeah.
Right? So that doesn't even make any sense, that claim. So the reason why talking about the military intelligence connection, or the military intelligence entities that were running COVID, why that's important is because everybody on all sides still talks about COVID as if it was a public health event, meaning there was some kind of pathogen, whether it was natural, whether it was engineered, and that pathogen was poorly handled. It was handled very badly by the stupid people and the mean people like Fauci, who is a mean person, and he wants to, he wanted to mask people and have people social distance, and he's the mastermind behind all of that. No, absolutely not. He was a mouthpiece. The CDC, all of the public health agencies were not allowed. They were not allowed to talk to the media directly. And it's stated in the Pandemic Crisis Action Plan Adapted, which is the government's plan for COVID. They were not allowed to even have their own press conferences. It all had to go through the task force, which was run by the National Security Council. And so that means that everything that we heard about the so-called pandemic, y'all say plandemic because you like that word. Everything we heard about it was being said by Fauci. It was being said by Redfield or whatever, but it was not being planned by them. They were just the public face of it. And so now going after Fauci and going after the CDC and saying we have to reform the NIH is a complete waste of time, and it is a diversion, and it is propaganda. And so if you know and acknowledge, which very few people, even on the health freedom side, will acknowledge or understand, that the pandemic, that plandemic was run by the military intelligence and global corporations, the pharma corporations, Silicon Valley, including Elon Musk, including Peter Thiel, including all of the surveillance and control companies, because one of the goals of it, okay, so another way to understand that it wasn't a public health event is to see what were the goals of the measures that were taken. And what I like to say is it was not the virus that killed the world. It was the lockdown until vaccine response that killed the world. So we don't need to look into origins of the virus. All of the hearings that we're having with, oh my God, and the CIA is revealing that Fauci went and talked to them. You know what? That happened in 2022. It was revealed in 2022. They're recycling the news from 2022. Now they're having more hearings with Fauci. Fauci is going to finally have to answer questions. They did that. They already did that. They did that in 2023 and 2024 and 2030. They already did that. And they never asked him the questions about who was running the response. They never asked him the questions.
So who was running the response? Who's Fauci's boss?
Who is Fauci's boss? So the problem with that question is that it's looking for a particular person or people. And when we think about the deep state, it's huge. So who was his boss? Peter Thiel was his boss. Robert Kadlec, who you probably never heard of, was his boss. Some people in Germany and in England and in Australia were his boss. All the people who were in charge of the pharmaceutical biodefense global public-private partnership were his boss. That's a lot of people. Yeah. And so it's not very useful to talk about the people. It's useful to talk about the structure that is in place that causes these things to happen. And
so how do we blow up the Death Star? I mean, like in Star Wars, they find that one little weak spot. Like, does the deep state Death Star have a weak spot?
Doesn't exist. That doesn't exist.
That's not good.
Doesn't exist. So that's another fantasy that they want us to believe, right?
I gotta have something, Debbie. Keep me,
So okay, I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something.
I'll take whatever you
got. So what we get, so it's also a mistake, I think, to look for that, to look for the weak spot, to try to destroy the Death Star. The Death Star, in this case, which is a giant global conglomerate of huge, very powerful entities, corporations, like we said, military, intelligence. You can go after as many people in those particular things as you want. You can go after, Pfizer, the head of Pfizer. You can go after the head of Moderna. You can go after the head of the CIA. You can go after the head of BARDA. You can go. Doesn't matter. They're still going to exist, right? And the next person is going to come up and do the same thing. And so the first thing that we need to do, and people always think that this is not a solution, but this is the solution, is expose
Yeah.
what's going on. If so few people, even on our so-called side, understand what actually happened and understand who the culprits are and what the structures are, they're still spending all their time trying to get Bobby elected, or trying to support Maha, or trying to prosecute Fauci or something like that, instead of saying, hey, step back. What's happening today that is a continuation of what was happening during COVID? And I'll tell you what's happening today. They're passing laws in all different states to have child safety on the internet. Okay, and those laws are actually designed to have age checks for everyone, and to have your identity linked to your activity and your access to the internet. All of us should be focusing, if we all focus just on that, on preventing that from happening, on preventing these laws that are being passed in all the states, not just in Europe, in the United States. If we all focused on not allowing or on protesting against the use of energy for AI, against the emergency states that Trump declared, against if everybody refuses to go next time, if there's a draft or if there is a call for people to go and fight against, evil Putin or whatever, if they all don't do it, if they don't comply,
Yeah.
right? But first they have to understand what the structures are, not who the people are, what the structures are that are all aligned against us. And if we all understood that, even if all of those of us who understood it during COVID still understood it now, if let's say none of the people, okay, in the health freedom movement were propagandized into supporting Bobby and Trump and all of that. Let's say they all stayed out of politics. And starting in 2024, they all talked about Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, the global pharmaceutical corporations, and how they were working globally to establish networks of surveillance and control. All of them. That's a lot of people who went with Maha and Bobby and that. If they all had stayed out of it and had started talking about that 2 years ago, don't you think that we would be in a better place right now?
Yeah.
In terms of the Death Star, because way more people would understand what the Death Star is. Doesn't mean we can destroy it, but it means that we can withdraw our consent.
Yes. I totally agree. We have to do what you're doing, expose and understand and comprehend and reverse engineer what these demons are doing by good research like this, and share it with as many people as you can, and shine the light into these dark places. And like my saying is, we're not going to fix this in an election booth. We got a better chance of fixing it in a confession booth. What I mean by that is just, be the best person you could be, and be honest and be truthful and be brave, because this kind of work requires a lot of courage. I mean, look what CJ's going through. Look what other people are suffering from, losing their jobs and their friends and their family. But you know the truth, and you know what's right, and you know what these people are doing is a lie and wrong. So, and evil in my estimation, in the spiritual terms. But thank God there's angels like you, there's good people working to expose the truth and to get to the heart of the matter and to see the big picture, which you've helped open my mind up to looking at things from an even wider vantage point. So I appreciate that. I'm humble enough to admit when I'm wrong. And I want to learn. Because man, it's like so fascinating studying these people, because it's, you have to understand human psychology and geopolitics and science and technology. There's so many things that come into it that it's the most fascinating game in the world. It's way more interesting to me than soccer, So this is the real game. This is the great game. This is the game where your literal freedom and survival and the future of your family depends upon it. So I want to thank you, Debbie. And do you have any, the name of your Substack is?
DebbieLerman.substack.com.
That's a good name.
And it's Debbie Lerman Substack. But I want to return the compliment, really, Anthony, because thank you, by the way, for the kind words. And I think sometimes I come across as too much of a know-it-all. And if, and so I don't want to come across as if I think that I know everything. I think that I have a really good insight into propaganda. That's my pretty much big area of expertise. So I can see what's happening on all sides, and I don't get sucked into the partisan or
Yeah.
the side. But what I can't do, and what you do so incredibly well, is to use art, to use the right brain. So I'm very left brained, I'm very analytical. But to use the right brain, the creativity and the spirit, which is what you do, in order to not just expose what's going on, but also help people to feel that what they are feeling and understanding is not wrong. That if they're feeling the way that your art depicts, they're not alone and they're not wrong. And these things are happening, but we can use our creative and our creative powers and sort of our spiritual resilience. I think that's what your art does, is show us that we can use those things as tools, also as tools of resistance. And that might be the most important thing, because those are the most human and the most precious human traits, is creativity and our spirituality. So I am deeply appreciative of that in terms of your work.
Well, thank you, Debbie, and thank you for all your great work. Please check out Debbie's Substack, and she's given you this gift of knowledge through her own hard work and research. And the secrets of the universe are in these works that Debbie and some other people do. And so, thank you again for your time, and thank you for the kind words. And I'll see you soon.
Thanks. I'll see you soon.